So one option for smart cards that we have in GitLab Learn is a project smart card, which allows the user to submit a URL to a project for grading. In this training, I'm going to go over how to build those project smart cards and then the behavior of those smart cards when it's built. So right now I'm in the sandbox. It might look a little bit different than production in terms of like branding and color. If I want to make a project smart card, I'm going to hit create smart card, choose smart card, and choose the project option. Here I'm going to add a title. I'm going to add a description. The description is great to, it's a great place to add information about what the user should be uploading, if it's optional, if it's required, that it will be a URL, etc. In terms of GitLab, an example of this could be, it might be project work that was done in a Google Doc and you're sharing the URL, or an issue or a merge request that was opened and you're sharing the URL for either of those. You have the option to add an image, which is just going to show up on the smart card. It has nothing to do with the project, and it doesn't mean that you can add an image file as the project. You can also attach a file if you would rather do that instead of adding the description here, but the attached file is not necessary. Then you have some settings that you need to define for how the card will work. So there's 3 options for the grading scale, A through F, 0 through 10, 0 through 100. The submitter, this is going to set the requirements for who can submit to the project card. So either assignees only can submit or anyone can submit. It's important when you're creating this to think about who the grader is and what capacity they have if anyone can submit, keeping in mind that our wider community of GitLab is on GitLab Learn and can access content that isn't marked as private. And then finally, the grader. So we have 3 different options for the grader: the assigner, so that's the person who assigns the card to the learner; the author, that's the author of the card, which could sometimes be the same as the assigner, but it's not always the same; and then the manager, that's the manager of the learner. We don't have manager data for non-GitLab team members, so if you're opening up a project card for non-GitLab team members, the manager is not the most appropriate option. Whereas if you do want GitLab team members managers to grade and review the projects that are submitted, manager would be the best choice. We have options just like on any smart card to share, mark as private, add tags. The content type is, in this case, you can get clear on what you want the person to be submitting, but remembering that it's going to be a URL either way. So maybe you're asking them to submit a URL of a blog, of a document, of other, if merge request is what you're having them submit and merge request isn't an option, a project could be a good choice here. It's really up to you, however you want to communicate to the learner. It is required, so just choose one that is best fit of what the people are going to be submitting. In the advanced settings, oh, I already had it open. You can restrict to, and we have documentation about the difference between share and restrict to in the handbook. Skip the provider. You as the author are the provider, so we don't need to add anything here. And then expectation of how many hours and minutes it's going to take. I would likely include this as in terms of how long is it going to take the person to complete the project, not how long is it going to take them to put the URL in. So instead of like 2 minutes, it probably would be something more like 1 hour or 3 hours. And then you hit create. So one thing to highlight is that this can be done both from within a pathway or on its own. So the way that I showed you this create button is how you create a project smart card on its own. But if you were working inside of a new pathway, this add smart card will put the smart card directly into that pathway, and you can choose a project card and it goes through the exact same process from within the pathway. So now I would like to show you what is going to happen when you create that project smart card, and then how the user is going to see it. So here's an example of a project smart card that I created, and I want to highlight like the limitations that the author has on project smart cards. So if I created this project smart card, you can see I added an image, etc. There's no option here for me to submit. Since I'm the author of this card, I cannot submit a URL to the project card. I am able to view submissions. This view submissions is something that any admin in the platform can do, but you can see that I can't submit, which is a little bit confusing if you're the author and you haven't used project cards before, because it's hard to test if it's working. So I'm going to go back into production and I'm going to show you a live project card and what that looks like. So here we have Cynthia is the author of this project card. She's added an image here. She's added a description. Because I'm an admin, I can see the option to view submissions. If you aren't an admin, you won't be able to see that. And then because I'm not the author and this card must be able for everyone to submit, I'm just going to check the settings to see. So anyone can submit, which means that since I'm not assigned and I'm just a user in the platform, I have the option to add a submission. So when your users are moving through the pathway and they get to this project card, they're going to see the option to add submission, where they will add their URL and click add. That will mark this card as complete, and then they will move on to the next step. So yep, those are the steps for how you can create and use project cards in GitLab Learn.